All right, guys, so we need to talk about this. We're basically already at war with Venezuela. Now, look, I would submit to you that it was war from the first innocent fishermen that we blew up in the Caribbean. To me, that's war. If Venezuela started bombing fishermen off the coast of Montauk, I think the U.S. government would say, oh shit, we're at war, we need to retaliate, right? But here we are, fucking 25 boats in that we've bombed? And, they still pretend like, oh, it's just a limited operation. Like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? We've killed now, I believe, over 100 people, and they act like it's nothing. By the way, we were able to track it. We know some of these people were fishermen from Trinidad and Tobago. Some of them were from Colombia. Some of them were from Venezuela. We have their families coming out on the record explaining, hey, this person had nothing to do with any drug trafficking or anything like that. It's a fact, right? So from then, it was already war. But now it's escalated. And now it's escalated to a point where it's existential for Venezuela. So the other day, we discussed how the U.S. Stole one of their oil tankers. Well, now the U.S. is doing it as a matter of routine operation. They are seizing all of the oil tankers. So this is really, really next level. Let's take a look at this. We have a report from ABC News where they break it down for us.
We are once again seeing the president ramp up the pressure on Venezuela. This is the second time in less than 2 weeks that the U.S. has seized an oil tanker off the country's coast. The administration is now going after the country's economic lifeblood.
Now, by the way, let me just pause to point out, again, put the shoe on the other foot. Could you imagine if Venezuela or Russia or China or Iran, they kept seizing our oil tankers when we tried to deliver our oil or our natural gas to our allies? Imagine they kept it. What would our reaction be in a scenario like that? What would our reaction be? They've murdered 100 U.S. fishermen off the coast of Montauk, and they keep stealing our oil tankers.
This morning, rising tensions with Venezuela. The U.S. Coast Guard seizing yet another oil tanker off the country's coast. New video released by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem shows the operation carried out by an elite Coast Guard tactical team, according to U.S. officials. It's the same type of unit used just 10 days earlier when American forces rappelled from helicopters onto another oil tanker's deck to take control of the ship. Noem announcing the United States will continue to pursue the illicit movement of sanctioned oil that is used to fund narco-terrorism in the region. We will find you and we will stop you.
Now, by the way, it's totally made up. It's total bullshit. The idea that this is funding narco-terrorism, even the idea that it's illegal. No, the U.S. has decided to steal the oil. There is no national consensus about this or international consensus about this where other countries agree that, oh, what's happening here is not acceptable. The U.S. has every right to seize their stuff. That's made up. It's totally fake. It's totally fake.
Unlike that first vessel, Saturday's tanker is not on any sanctions list maintained by the U.S., the European Union, the U.K., or the UN.
And that's the other point, is I even read that one of the ships they seized, that it was like a Chinese oil tanker. Like one of them had, was like registered in Guyana or something like that. They don't even know if they're getting the right tankers. Never mind. Again, I just want to be clear. Even if it was the quote unquote right tanker, as in it was Venezuela's, that's still illegal. That's still not allowed. That's still insane. That's still an act of war. But talk about acting like some fucking idiotic cowboys. It's like, I don't know, just seize any fucking tanker. The way we act on the global stage is fucking humiliating.
According to Kepler, a data firm that tracks transportation and logistics networks. Days earlier, President Trump threatened to impose what he called a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers traveling to and from Venezuela, a move that could devastate the Venezuelan economy.
So again, now take note of what's happening here. We're going to make the civilians suffer. We want the civilians to suffer as much as possible. I mean, they were already fucking murdering them, the fishermen. But now it's like literally anybody and everybody who lives in Venezuela, the lifeblood of the Venezuelan economy, we're seizing all of that. So does the U.S. care that now people might not be able to pay their fucking bills there, that now people will be struggling even more so than they already are? No, honestly, I got to be honest, it reminds me of, after October 7th, when the Israeli government says, oh, we're cutting off all food, fuel, water, and electricity going into Gaza. So even though there's only 30 or 40,000 Hamas members, we're going to collectively punish 2.3 million people over the actions of some Hamas members. And now we're saying, well, we don't like Maduro. We want to do our illegal war and overthrow him and do regime change. So do you happen to be a regular person who lives in Venezuela? Sorry, you might have to starve now.
Oil exports are the lifeblood of President Nicolas Maduro's regime. Trump accusing Maduro of exploiting the country's vast oil fields to enrich himself and his administration.
Oh, that is so rich coming from Trump, who's using the U.S. presidency to enrich himself and his family. Oh my God, that is so rich. Is it possible to die of hypocrisy? Because I think I'm about to. Jesus Christ. He's made like billions of dollars off the White House. Billions of dollars. With his crypto scams and all that stuff. And here he is chastising Maduro over his corruption. Dude, you're the most corrupt president in U.S. history, and it's not even close.
Maduro firing back this week with a blunt message to Americans.
Not blood for oil.
The U.S. has now amassed the largest military presence in the Caribbean in decades, including the world's largest aircraft carrier. The Pentagon also striking 28 alleged drug boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, killing at least 100 people without providing any public evidence or identifying those killed.
Again, I have to marvel at the fact we are so desensitized to this that it's 28 boats that have been attacked and 100 people killed. And like, I thought it was still like 23 boats, you know? Like every single one of those attacks is a fucking tragedy. And it's fucking terrorism and murder. And we're so desensitized to it that we went from 23 to 28 in the blink of an eye and from 85 people dead to 100 dead in the blink of an eye. And nobody even talked about it. I cover this stuff all day, every day. And even I was like, oh, I guess I missed like 5 boat strikes. What?
Secretary of State Marco Rubio defending the administration's escalation.
At the end of the day, it is clear that the current status quo with the Venezuelan regime is intolerable for the United States.
Who the fuck are you to decide that? Like, it's so pompous and arrogant, this idea of like, well, obviously we get to decide what happens with all of the other countries that are not us. Why? Why? That makes no sense. That makes no sense. I mean, is literally anti-international law is what this idea is. We're a nation above nations, not a nation among nations. That breeds contempt and resentment. Correctly so. So yeah, I mean, it is just disgusting how they think we're above the law and like nothing applies to us just because we happen to have a lot of guns.
And President Trump has been warning for weeks now that land strikes targeting drug traffickers inside Venezuela could be coming soon, saying this week that he's not ruling out war. So lawmakers, they are now demanding transparency, asking what is the real end game here? Is it oil? Is it drugs? Or is it regime change?
I do have to say, shout out to ABC News. This is a much better segment than, I thought they were capable of doing. The fact that we're even having a conversation now about, hey, what is the actual reason they're doing this? Because it certainly doesn't seem, the drugs thing doesn't really add up. Is it about regime change? Is it about oil? The fact that they're saying that out loud and Trump hasn't even bombed in Venezuela proper yet, that's a big deal. And it shows that their propaganda offensive has failed. I think people forget. During the Iraq War, they had to do like 2 years of relentless propaganda to get the American people to agree to go to war in Iraq. They didn't just do it immediately because they realized there'd be a backlash to that. Trump is not even bothering with a good propaganda offensive. It's very, haphazard and slapped together at the last minute. It's like the Three Stooges out there trying to fucking make the argument. And so now you have even the media's going, I don't know about this. It doesn't make sense. Except with one exception, right? With one exception. So you got to see this. The New York Times, the supposed paper of record, the supposed liberal New York Times, ready? So Adam Johnson tweets the following. More brainless stenography from the paper of record. Is anyone at the New York Times interested in doing any actual journalism or just running through a list of official say and wholesale embracing the U.S. government's line? Let's break down the problems with the latest copy and paste job from the New York Times. So the New York Times, as they talk about this, they keep phrasing it from the perspective of the FBI and the CIA and the Trump regime and giving like this steelman version of their argument, even though their argument is fucking preposterously stupid and offensively insulting and totally not backed by the evidence. So Adam Johnson says, the piece heavily implies that Venezuela's oil is under sanctions from the U.S. and other countries. It's not. It is only under sanctions from the U.S. 2, we've now moved from scare quotes to the New York Times just using the term ghost tankers. This is a meaningless propaganda term. Why are they ghosts? Could it be because one country, the U.S., is stealing their oil and they'd like them to not do that? Is anyone at the New York Times interested in asking if these ships are hiding their location because the U.S. is hijacking them rather than the current narrative that the U.S. is hijacking their ships because the U.S. is suddenly very interested in the flag display formalism in international waters? Does anyone think this is anything other than pretextual and clearly a system designed to create its own pretext through U.S. belligerence? The U.S. can steal billions in oil from a starving country, but don't worry, New York Times assures us, it's only a law enforcement action, not an act of war. So if China unilaterally stole dozens of U.S. ships with billions in oil, rest assured, the New York Times would not consider this an act of war. He continues, once again, the New York Times makes the claim these actions are legal, citing the UN law of the sea. And once again, the New York Times does so without pointing out the fairly relevant fact that the U.S., unlike 167 other countries, is not a signatory to the UN law of the sea. Yeah, I love how now they're going to bring up the UN. Meanwhile, when the UN was screaming from the top of their lungs, hey, Israel, stop doing that genocide, stop doing that ethnic cleansing, stop bombing innocent children, what did the U.S. say then? Shh, www.shh.org. I need you to shut up and allow Israel to massacre as many people as they want. But now they cite it, even though we haven't even signed on to it. All right, he says, so the New York Times finds a blob lawyer to throw out fancy-sounding treaties that seem vaguely consistent with international law without noting that, number one, random countries can't just go around enforcing flag requirements via stealing ships. And two, the U.S. isn't a signatory to the relevant treaty. The U.S. has zero legal authority to unilaterally engage in law enforcement actions on international waters, and the only lawyers the New York Times can find to say they do are American blob lawyers. By this logic, China can begin hijacking U.S. corporate ships that violate their Taiwan-related sanctions. New York Times liberal washing of Trump over his transparent attempt to provoke war using piracy is bottom rung even for the Times. Total embrace of the White House line. No seeking out international legal experts critical of the U.S. and totally false internationalizing of unilateral U.S. dictates. If the U.S. wishes to embrace the editorial position, might makes right, and the U.S. can do whatever it wants because it has the largest military in the world, they're welcome to, but they can't keep lying and bullshitting that any of this has anything to do with international law. The New York Times continues its zombie liberalism, despite the fact that Trump openly talks about taking Venezuela's oil, despite the fact the White House brazenly lies about everything. The New York Times still goes out of its way to run through the motions of international law formalism. He is exactly right. Enough with the bullshit. We're 10 years deep into Trumpism. Fucking 2015, he came down that escalator. And you still can't call a spade a spade. You still can't say he's lying. You still can't point to the inconsistencies. You still can't say, hey, you know what? That's totally false. That's totally made up. This is piracy. This is thievery. This is robbery. This is, by the way, what was the criticism of myself and other leftists? Oh, I think that this war, this regime change war, is literally to steal the oil from Venezuela. We've already been proven correct. They are already stealing the oil. That's what the seizing of the tankers is about. They're already stealing the oil. We know it's not about drugs. Why? No fentanyl comes from Venezuela. Less than 5% of the drugs that come into the U.S. come through Venezuela. It's got nothing to do with drugs. Even the ships that they said were carrying drugs, they would need to refuel 20 times to reach the U.S. They weren't even going in the direction of the U.S. It's all made up. It's all bullshit. Trump wants to steal the oil, and he wants a puppet regime in Venezuela. He wants to repay U.S. billionaires and corporations for getting his ass in office, right? That's what it is. That's what it is. And so here we are, and, there's this massive propaganda effort which attempts to sane wash and liberal wash his fucking war crimes and atrocities. To the point where he's literally on camera multiple times saying, we're going to steal the oil. And they go, oh, this has to do with international law. And, Venezuela's violating it by doing business with other countries. What? It's just unbelievable. It is unbelievable. So there are some aspects of U.S. media, some elements and factions in U.S. media that are doing a decent job. But the New York Times is not one of them. And by the way, I heard some hand-wringing on MS Now earlier, too, on the same topic of like, is it legal? Well, maybe. No, it's not fucking legal. Let's grow up. Let's stop acting like we're toddlers. Stop being this naive. I know exactly what this is. You know exactly what this is. This is another war for oil. It's happening right now. And every single day that they bomb more innocent fishermen, and every single day that they steal more oil tankers, is another day, another war crime, another thing to add to the impeachment list and the 25th Amendment list, and another thing to add to the future Nuremberg trials, which absolutely need to happen given the extent of the criminality of this regime.
Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.